All right. How have you been?
Hi, I've been well, very busy.
Yeah,
Some stressful stuff.
I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. Are you getting phone calls at all hours of the day and night and morning and
It's interesting. I don't know that I'm really getting phone calls like that. People are being very good about calling the office during regular hours, but it's all scary, really.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of disturbing things going on.
yeah,
So
yeah,
not normal, not regular
no,
things. I've done this over 35 years.
yeah,
Just some new things.
yeah.
New bad things
So just to
or
catch
worse
up,
things than before.
sure, just to catch everyone up who hasn't maybe seen you on the podcast before on the Attorney 911 podcast. You are a seasoned, very seasoned, and amazing immigration lawyer. You've been
Thank
practicing
you.
for over 30 years. You did a lot of pro bono before you started getting paid for your work. You take a very passionate, a passionate approach to your work. You care about your clients, and really quick, just give everyone your contact information in case, they have an immigration issue that they want to contact you about. You are, principally located in Houston, Texas, but obviously, immigration law is federal law, so you know the law all around the nation.
That's true. I do represent people all over the country and the world. My name is Magali Candler. My number here at the office, Suarez Candler Law, which is my maiden name and my last name, 713-672-2635. And they can email us at mcandler, MCANDLER, SUAREZCANDLER, SuarezCandlerLaw.com.
And so, jumping right in, these days, let's say, how would somebody go about? And I don't even know if it's possible right now, but how would somebody go about getting a green card? Like a new person, can they get a green card? Is that even a possibility?
It's not easy, and I'll just say I guess the short version is it can be through family, and it can't be uncles, aunts, cousins. It is only spouses that are U.S. citizens or permanent residents can sponsor spouses. They can sponsor children under 21 if they're permanent residents, and who are they can also sponsor over 21. It takes longer, but they have to be single if you're a
Mm-hmm.
permanent resident. And if you're a U.S. citizen, you can also sponsor brothers and sisters. The wait for that visa is over 20 years. It gives you an idea. And U.S. citizens can sponsor their parents.
So I have
So
a quick
that's
question.
family based. Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's employment based.
Okay.
Not easy either. There's various preference categories, and some people need something called a labor certification first, where they have to prove to the Department of Labor that there are no American workers for that position, and that can take, in and of itself, that first step, 1 year at least. And then the company has to sponsor you with a petition, and then you have to apply for permanent residency, which is also kind of the steps. If you're doing it through family, you can do it at a consulate or you can do it here. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is that almost no one can do it here. If you have been here illegally for more than 6 months, I mean, even honestly, even if you've been here illegally less than 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be all very difficult to fix your papers inside the United States. I mean, I am not exaggerating that I could do a continuing legal education program just on how do you get your green card
Right.
for easily 2 days. I'm
Right.
not exaggerating,
Yeah.
but it gives you an idea. If you entered legally and you overstayed and you're married to a U.S. citizen, that's about the only thing that's forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a U.S. citizen sponsoring your parents, if your parents came in or one parent came in with permission and overstayed, they could fix their papers here. And it's still not easy, but
Right.
they can do it. The problem is the majority of people we see, that want to, be here, they want to work hard, they want to do everything right, there is no path for them.
Right.
I mention the employment base because lots of employers would like to sponsor someone, but usually that person, if they've been here illegally, either as an overstay or because they entered illegally, it's going to be almost impossible for that employer to get them to stay here,
right.
for them to get their green cards, for them to stay here, or be able to go to their consulates and come back. When they leave, they'll trigger a 10-year bar. They won't be eligible for a waiver. These laws have been in place, the worst ones, since 1996. So we've been wanting to see some change, and instead of things getting better, they've been getting worse. The other thing is humanitarian. If you win asylum, or if you're found to be a refugee outside of the United States, and you enter as a refugee, and we're not doing that anymore right now anyway,
right.
But if you do, or if you win asylum inside the United States, very difficult to do, but you have to prove that you meet the definition of refugee. If you win, you can apply for your green card after a year. But again, that's very difficult. There are also some weird, U visas for victims of serious crime. You can get a green card after that. The last person that got a green card that I represented had been kidnapped and raped. I mean, you have to be, a victim of a serious crime. And it also takes almost 10 years to go through that process. But she just did get her green card.
Wow.
I've got 2 other cases in different stages, and it could be another 5 or 10 years. And one of those women may be deported, I hope not, while she's waiting for that visa.
Yeah.
Also, victims of severe forms of human trafficking, if you qualify for that, you can also apply for a green card afterwards. But that's kind of an overview, a very quick overview. I worry that I may have confused people. I hope not. But I think the answer truly is when people say, why don't they do it the right way? I will tell you that there's almost no right way for them.
Right.
Everything I just described is not easy, and about the most simple way would be if you entered legally, and sadly if you overstayed or whatever, and you're married to a U.S. citizen and it's a valid marriage, then they can sponsor you and you can quote unquote fix your papers inside the United States. But even that is not easy, and I've represented lawyers who tried to do this for their spouses and messed everything up, and I had to help them because it's easy to make mistakes. But that would be the simplest description, There's also in removal proceedings, if you've been here over 10 years and you have a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, spouse, parent, or children under 21, if you can prove that they would suffer extremely unusual and exceptional hardship if you were removed, then you might be able to win that case and get a green card that way, as long as you've been here over 10 years and have 10 years of good moral character. But
I feel like there should be like some flow chart, like if you're in this category, then go here and then go here.
Maybe,
and then,
if we were doing it
I don't know.
writing.
That might be like a 10-page
still not
flow
easy,
chart.
but in court there is cancellation of removal, but the majority of people can prove being here 10 years if they qualify for that to at least apply, and if they have the family members that exist, they can usually prove 10 years of good moral character. But the problem is proving a spouse's or parent or child who's a permanent resident or U.S. citizen, proving their exceptional and extremely unusual hardship.
Right.
Because, the joke is somebody has to be dying of cancer. Because generally, no matter what you show, the judges will say, well, sorry, but, that's what anybody would suffer if they were going to be separated from their dad. It's really hard to prove that.
The question I have that was popping up into my head is, when you're saying these 10 years, 20 years, all this time, if someone applies, this may be a stupid question, but it's out of ignorance. If someone applies for their green card, and we all know it's going to take however many years it's going to take, let's say 20, during that whole time, they're deportable, right? Because they haven't gotten their green card.
If
Is
they're
that right?
here,
Or
yes.
if since you've applied, you're kind of in this safe zone, or that I
Yeah,
don't.
that's a good point. If you're inside the United States and you're out of status, you don't have a status, or you never had one, you entered illegally, or you overstayed and you're
Mm-hmm.
out of status, if a family member petitions for you, I have to say, unless the petition, if the law doesn't change again, this I would like to see again. We had a law that sunset, I should say, on April 30th of 2001. And if your family member did not petition for you or an employer prior to April 30th of 2001, then you would have to leave the country to go get your green card. And many people may not qualify for that 10-year bar waiver. So there are people who feel trapped here. But yes, I mean, to answer your question in general, someone like that who's trying to do it, beginning the process while they're in the United
Mm-hmm.
States, they continue being deportable, usually when it's only the only thing that's been done, or the only thing that can be done, is the first step where a family member petitioned for you. Now, if it's a U.S. citizen, what they call immediate relatives, a spouse or child under 21 who's unmarried, or parent of a U.S. citizen, those are the only ones considered immediate relatives, and those people could file their adjustment of status application for permanent residency at the same time as the petition. So they can almost immediately, within months, have a work permit and be here under color of law. And I would argue that even before you get your work permit, if you are the spouse of a U.S. citizen who entered legally, or the parent of a U.S. citizen who entered legally,
Right.
or the child under 21 of a U.S. citizen, stepchild, is usually what I'm going to see, where they married before the child was 18, so they qualify. Because otherwise, they may already derive citizenship if their parent was a U.S. citizen. They may have derived it even when they were born outside of the United States, if the parent was a U.S. citizen. But anyone who is an immediate relative who's U.S. citizen, 21-year-old or older, child is petitioning for you, son or daughter, or your spouse is petitioning for you, if you entered legally, you can file all the paperwork all at once. So they would not find themselves in that quandary that you just said. Technically, I think I would argue that they could still be put in removal. They are deportable. Immigration could decide we don't like you, and so we're going to put you in removal even though you filed your adjustment. But usually, realistically, I've never seen that. So if you entered legally and you are eligible for your U.S. citizen spouse to petition for you, and you file your green card application at the same time with your work permit application, you're not going to be put in removal. You're under color of law. Here, somehow, you can say, I'm an adjustment of status applicant. I'm applying for my green card. And you're going to be eligible for a work permit. So that's a little different. But I think a good example would be if you are here illegally, or you entered legally and you overstayed, and your U.S. citizen brother or sister petitions for you, and the visa isn't valid for another 20 years, yeah, you're deportable, and there's nothing, unless you're eligible for something else,
Right.
a temporary protected status, which they're all going away.
Yeah.
But unless you're eligible for something else, you're right. I mean, while you're waiting for that, you're not going to be eligible for anything.
Right.
And even my client who's waiting for the U visa as a victim of a serious crime, her daughter was basically, I'll say, raped by a teacher. They've been convicted. They helped convict him. She wasn't the only victim.
Yeah.
But so the mom is a victim of a serious crime.
Right.
As, the mother of a minor who's also testifying, etc. She counts for that. But I don't know if I'll be able to keep her here the whole time she's waiting for that visa, when in the past they've always been allowed to stay. They've even been given some sort of quasi status while they're staying, or if they have a removal order from a long time ago, an in
Right.
absentia order maybe from court, they've always been given usually a stay of deportation and an order of supervision where you can get a work permit. But I have a client where I'm worried about her, of course. And this is a concern, not just for me, but for anybody who represents people. They're trying to do the right thing. They're doing all they can. And people who would normally have been allowed to stay here are not, may not be.
Yeah.
The brother, though, or the sister waiting on that visa, there really is nothing. They just have to hope they won't be caught. But if they're caught, they'll be deportable, and who knows? Maybe they qualify for something in court.
Yeah. One thing
the long answer to your one question.
That's
Sorry.
okay, because it's very informative, and I know that people listening and trying to pay attention, they're just listening for their category, and then when they hear, oh, that's me, then they can kind of follow along. But
of course,
since
one thing I'll say is it's hard. It's not easy.
And the things that, you were just mentioning, this is going away, that's going away. I want to know one thing that I was reading about in the news in the last month or two was, Trump trying to end the birthright citizenship. What's going on with that right now?
Yes,
if you know?
That's a good question. I just did a Know Your Rights presentation on Zoom for a group, a nonprofit group, and I remember thinking it was interesting that we did not mention that, but it was in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, nobody asked me. It was just earlier this week. So thank you for asking. I think the reason we're not hearing much about it is that it has been stayed by the administration tried to pass an executive order trying to end birthright citizenship, which we get through the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. And the federal courts have stopped it. I think 2 different ones did. And I really think that's not going to make it ultimately. And I think it's not on their radar because I think everybody's realizing, hey, we would really probably need to change the Constitution.
Right.
We would need to do that. And that process is a difficult one. It's a long one. You need Congress involved. You need the states to vote. It's a long process. And I'm hopeful, first of all, just personally, but even professionally, it just doesn't make sense. I'm hopeful that, and just again as a lawyer, and because of the Constitution, I'm hopeful that it will stayed, and that nothing will ever come of it, and that we'll have a new administration in the future, or it will just lose at the Supreme Court if it makes it all the way there. I think the 14th Amendment is pretty clear. I've only heard maybe one very obscure argument to try to argue, well, maybe it could be done like this. But in general, I believe it's going to need to have a constitutional amendment, and it's going to be very difficult to change a constitution. And it would not be retroactive, only moving forward,
right.
But it would end up creating different classes of people, which of course the 14th Amendment was passed
right.
to keep slaves and children of slaves from being a secondary class.
Right. And so following up on that, what's your gut feeling with regards to, is the Supreme Court gonna, take this up and make a ruling on it, or is this something that they're just gonna let, the Constitution's already, the appellate court's already spoken on it, and we don't need to do anything on it?
That's a great question. It's really hard to know. I mean, this Supreme Court, I think, has been doing a lot of things that I still find to be very fair. I know people are concerned about the makeup of it and about this current president having appointed some of the, not a huge amount, but I mean some of the newer members to the justices, to the court. But I think that they would be fair. Now, would they take this up? Well, I don't know. I wish I had my crystal ball. I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks that they would want to take it up in order to make it very clear that this is a constitutional question, that it requires, a change to the Constitution,
yeah.
which, needs like 2/3 of Congress or more to ask for it, then it still has to be voted on, or 2/3 of the states have to ask for it. I mean, it's funny. I could just tell you, boom, boom, boom. I haven't had to think of it in a while. But I've answered that question in the past, being able to say what it takes, and now I'm afraid I'm going to tell you wrong. But again, it is a lengthy process. And if you think even about the Equal Rights Amendment, that didn't make it. And they did try to change the Constitution, I would say most recently with that.
Yeah. I was thinking that, I haven't heard, I know I was talking about having heard that they were trying to do away with, the administration was trying to do away with birthright citizenship, but I haven't heard much of approval of it, or, around, town or with around people saying that it's really important and they need to do it. I haven't heard much push for it other than the administration talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I agree with you. I haven't, well, what I've heard is I spoke at a legal conference for immigration, for the State Bar Immigration Conference in February, and I had been asked to speak about the different things that were pending, kind of what we're doing today, but just kind of an overview of, this was in February, so a lot of things were new. And this one was still, I don't remember if it had been stopped yet or not, cold, the way it kind of was stopped more recently. But, obviously the audience was comprised of lawyers, not all immigration lawyers, and I had a lot of people come up to me afterwards telling me, but again, not all of them were immigration lawyers, and many of them are more, some are very conservative, some are liberal, but I had a lot of people coming up to me because I had gotten kind of moved when I was talking about it starting because of slavery, and something about saying that this 14th Amendment existed because of slavery and the year that it passed, after the Civil War, etc. It really, I got a little emotional, and I normally don't when I'm speaking or presenting, and I had to take a second, and you could just tell that part of me had wanted, for whatever reason, it seemed as if I wanted to cry, and I'll admit I kind of did. It was weird. It took me by surprise, and I had to stop and excuse myself and, just keep going. And later people came up to me and said, I'm so glad that you don't be ashamed, don't embarrass, because I kept, I said, oh, excuse that or whatever. And they said, don't apologize for that. I feel the same way. I had so many people come up to me. Granted, it's lawyers, but I think.
Yeah, that's nice. Validation.
Everything I've ever heard when it was discussed, even on the news, people seem to be very against it, against this. It's like, why? It just seems very un-American.
Right.
I don't know. I think it's not on people's radar as much. And I don't think people really want that as much as far as the general public. I don't think.
You just learned something new. Attorney911, the podcast, with attorney Ralph Manginello. We hope you found today's conversation insightful and helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode, and share it with family and friends who might benefit from the things we talk about. A new podcast launches every week. That means you get more legal tips, real-life cases, and expert advice. This is Attorney911, the podcast.